name is Karla Garrett, and I am a certified radical forgiveness coach and workshop facilitator. It's been an interesting professional journey for me, coming from an original career as a school teacher and then going into the practice of law for quite a few years. And in 1989, I had an opportunity to shift gears and buy an event planning firm from some old friends here in Dallas, Texas. Moved here from Houston. I was actually born in Dallas, so it was really like coming home in many ways. What I didn't know at the time was that sort of set me on a path to meeting all of the people that led me to eventually become a personal coach and to begin to add a variety of tools to my toolbox. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I'm a certified hypnotist. Do a variety of different things. I'm a certified master graphologist, handwriting analyst. And so I became very fascinated with all of this. And in the late 1990s, I was introduced to the book Radical Forgiveness, written by Colin Tipping. And it was brought to me by a friend who had met Colin in person and said, "You are going to love this book." And I read it and I went, oh my gosh, somebody's finally written down everything we've been talking about for years. And I just loved it, and I added it to my toolbox for my coaching practice, and met Colin a short time after that, and he established a training program for coaches. I did that. And in 2001, he hired me to run the training program for coaches. So that's where I am today. I'm Director of Education and Training for the Radical Forgiveness Institute. The Radical Forgiveness Institute is located in Marietta, Georgia, where Colin Tipping and his wife Joanne live. And I love the work. I'm passionate about it. It has enabled me to really have a much more positive impact on people, I feel, than I ever had when I was practicing law. And as much as I still have very dear friends from my legal days, the work that I do now is very, very satisfying, spiritually rewarding, and satisfying on a heart level. One of the questions that people want to know is how did you go from being a lawyer to being an event planner and working in catering and doing that sort of thing? And it was, I sort of came by that talent naturally, I suppose. My mother was an event planner, if you will, for one of the top hotels in Kansas City before she married my father. And she always threw wonderful, great parties. And I was right there in the kitchen alongside her, and it just came as a very natural skill for me. So I went on to doing that. What I really feel like happened for me, though, is what I call my spiritual family tree. My spiritual family tree was very much about how my life moved from one stage to the next. When I was a young child living here in Dallas, my mother met a woman named Jean, and we remained friends with her for many, many years, even after we moved to Houston. And we knew Jean and her family at our church here in Dallas. And even after my mother passed on, I stayed in touch with Jean. And she told me on one of my visits to Dallas that she was considering selling her business. She was retirement age, and she was ready to get out of the business. And I thought, just a few months earlier, I had been sitting in my office in Houston, and even though, like I say, I dearly, dearly loved the people that I worked with, I was getting a little bored. It seemed like if I have to write one more city ordinance telling people where they can or can't park, or what kind of sign they can put up on a building, I think I'm going to go crazy. And so I really, there was a part of me that was ready to move, that was ready to do something different. And so I made a proposal to Jean and her business partner, and I bought this event planning business from them, and it moved me to Dallas. that was not the right business for me, but it put me in a position to begin to meet some very, very interesting people. And one of my catering clients introduced me to a psychologist in Dallas who was a professional handwriting analyst. She had established the first school for training professional handwriting analysts in Dallas back in the 80s. And she and I became quite good friends. But a short time after we became friends and I began studying her courses through her school, she was murdered. And it sort of felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. Here I was all excited about this potential new profession that I would go into, and it was all of a sudden very uncertain as to whether I would be able to make it. Well, I did make it, and was just very grateful for that. And while I was trying to build my business as a professional handwriting analyst, I had actually earlier been able to sell my event planning business to one of my competitors. And everything just flowed from one thing to the next. One of the people that I had met from Dr. Bryden, who was the psychologist that I was studying with, after she passed on, after she was killed, this woman introduced me to a man here in Dallas, Dr. John McMurphy, who was a professor at SMU, and he also had a business that he operated, a program called the Walden Institute. He was very much like Henry David Thoreau. He was this philosophical, deep thinker, and he taught some of the most fascinating classes on Native American principles. He taught about some of the great mathematicians and philosophers of history as mystics. And one of the classes that I took was called the Metaphysics of Genesis. I'd grown up loving the Bible, and Dr. McMurphy was co-teaching this class with a man here in Dallas named Jimmy Langkop. And I'd heard of this guy a couple of different times, but I had not met him. Well, when I took this Metaphysics of Genesis class and met Jimmy Langkop, there was an instant connection between us. When I talk about this spiritual family tree, it went from the woman Jean to another one of my catering clients who then introduced me to Dr. Bryden, and through her death I met this other person who introduced me to Dr. McMurphy, who introduced me to Jimmy, and Jimmy's ultimately the person who introduced me to Colin Tipping, who is the author of Radical Forgiveness, Making Room for the Miracle. So I really do see that progression in my life as a path that I was meant to follow. Again, I started out in life wanting to be a teacher. And even though it's running a distance learning program and working with adults instead of children, I'm still having an opportunity to be an educator and to help people through their studies to become radical forgiveness coaches. We also have the Radical Manifestation Coaching Program, and we have a program for radical empowerment teachers.